This episode is brought to you by Progressive. Progressive helps you compare direct auto rates from a variety of companies so you can find a great one, even if it's not with them. Quote today at Progressive.com to find a rate that works with your budget. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Hello and welcome to This Day in Esoteric Political History from Radiotopia. My name is Jody Avirgan. And we are here on the third and final episode of We Refuse Week, where we are marking the release of Kelly Carter Jackson's new book called We Refuse, A Forceful History of Black Resistance. Here, as always, Nicole Hemmer of Vanderbilt and Kelly Carter Jackson of Wellesley. Hello there.
Hello, Jody.
Hey there.
So a quick recap. The first episode, we talked a little bit about the book in general and your personal connection to this book. Second episode, we told the story of Carrie Johnson, 1919. I trust that everyone between that episode and this went and read the book to find out the shocking twists and turns that story takes after she is arrested. But we mentioned how one of the themes in your book is this idea of joy and how there's this sort of very nuanced and interesting relationship between joy and resistance and force and violence and all those things. So that's what we want to talk about today. And we have a couple specific stories, but I actually think a really good way to get into that is by talking about the incredible cover to your book, which I should also say, I'm going to go and say it was the only historical book cover to ever go viral on Twitter. Like when you announced this book cover and showed the artwork, it went nuts. Like people were feeling it. So we'll post photos of it on social and all that stuff. And if you buy the book, you can look and see the photo. But tell us a little bit about this cover. And then moreover, I think it just captures in one image all of those interweaving strands that we've talked about stoicism and violence and joy and beauty.
Yes.
And,
Yes, I love the artwork. It is by Taha Clayton, who is a Black Brooklyn artist. And the story behind it is kind of interesting. He had an art exhibit, and my publisher attended, and he was sort of going through the gallery, and at the top floor, one of the final pieces was a soldier of love. And this image, the actual painting, is huge. I mean, I think it's like 8 or 10 feet tall. It's massive. It's very life size. And he looked at it and he said, "Oh my gosh, that's the cover of Kelly's book." And so he emailed me and he was like, I want to send you this image. Tell me what you think. Am I crazy? Does this feel like this could be a cover? And the moment I saw it, I was like, oh my God. I was like, this is stunning. This is everything. The book really places a lot of emphasis on the role of Black women, the role that Black women played and contributed to African-American history. And seeing this beautiful Black woman and her intricate dreadlocks sitting on top of her head, almost like a nest, and then this long, white, flowing dress, and she looks very no-nonsense. I mean, her rifle is in her hand. It's pointed downward, but, she's ready. She is ready. Finger at the trigger in case anyone tries to come up on her. But then in the background is just this sort of very innocuous, laundry hanging, blue skies, green fields. I think it just represents so much and sort of the fierceness that Black women have and sort of protecting themselves and their kin and their community. And seeing Black women is just the vanguard. I absolutely love it. And it's we can do multiple things all at once. We can do laundry. We can protect our own. We can be on the lookout. We can be beautiful. We can do all the things all in once. It's so great.
It's such a striking image. And the other thing that I really love about it is on the cover itself. Her arms are holding the gun, and on the cover they are encircling the letters F and U. And that feels point.
I did not notice that. I did not at all notice that. And I was like, huh.
Yeah.
I did not design the cover, I will say. But the placement, we'll say, is political.
Fair
enough. Beautiful, incredible, stunning cover. The words inside the book are also beautiful and incredible and stunning. So let's talk a little bit about those. And, you're a historian. A lot of this is historical, but you bring it right up to the present, and especially a number of instances in very recent history around this question of, or this notion of joy in Black resistance. So what are the stories you want to tell us about today? Where do you start?
Yeah, there's so many. This chapter was the most fun to write. It's the most gratifying to write. And there was so much that I wanted to explore. I just didn't have space to put in. But I wanted to talk about all the different ways that joy manifests itself, and that joy can really be a weapon, that it fortifies us, particularly against oppressive systems and sort of the erosion of discrimination and violence, and how much I see joy just pop up in different moments, and how Black people cultivate these spaces that really are like safe havens for us, whether it is, some sort of viral meme or gift that's going around on the internet, or whether it is, a film. And so I talk about the joy that was just like so infectious at the debut of the Black Panther premiere, which took place in 2018. That feels like so long ago. I don't know why. But when Black Panther first came out, it just reminded me of how representation can be joy, like what it means to see yourself for the first time represented on screen in a meaningful, powerful way. And the joy around this film, the anticipation, the excitement was unmatched, I think about how not the trailer, but the teaser to the trailer got 89 million views in 24 hours.
Incredible.
And I was like, that is, insane. The pre-order ticket sales, people were going crazy. This is remains to this day one of the top 10 highest grossing Marvel films. I think it grosses 1.3 billion at the box office. But what I think stuck with people so much is that you have this all-Black cast. You have a Black director in Ryan Coogler. You have a superhero, no less, this African superhero, T'Challa, played by, the beloved Chadwick Boseman. And there was so much pride in this moment that as a Black person, patriotism is fraught, right? Like, it's really difficult sometimes to have a very patriotic stance because of all of the history that we've had in this country with race and racism. And seeing something like Black Panther, it made you want to beat your chest. It certainly made you want to, cross your arms and say Wakanda forever. Like, there was this joy that was felt among strangers just going to the movie theater dressed in kente cloth and or there what was it, there was a gif of a guy who was like, this is how I'm showing up to the premiere, and it was like from Coming to America, where King Joffrey has that lion head on his shoulder, and I was like, oh my gosh, the excitement was just I cannot think of another moment in sort of our cultural shared experience where there was that much collective joy. And that's a lot of pressure on a film. Yeah. You know what I mean?
But it's not just joy. I mean, look, you can't separate this from the fact that it's 2 years into the Trump era. There's an edge to it, right? There's an edge to it's the resistance and the joy and the sort of anger all mixed in together.
Yeah. There's a really great sort of biting line where there are moviegoers who are looking at like a billboard or an advertisement for Black Panther. And, this Black guy says, is this what white people get to feel all the time? All the time? Like this kind of hypeness for a superhero, like a Superman or a Spider-Man. And he was like, if we had like this sort of Black, superhero, like I would love this country too. Like I would feel invested and seen in ways that stirred up patriotism in me as well. And I think that that's a really powerful sentiment, because it just goes to show like how long and how difficult it's taken to see our Black selves on screen in such a major way that is so affirming and is so powerful. That's what Stan Lee set out to do when he created this comic. He wanted Black readers, Black comic book lovers, to have a hero as well, and someone that looked like them and represented them. And yeah, I'll never forget that experience. I'm not even a big comic book person, not at all. I'm not a big Marvel person. And my husband and I are like in Target buying my son like the backpack, the lunchbox, like, you know, the whole 9 yards. Like, he's going to be ready for the first day of school. He's going to have everything. Like, one of the reasons I put it in is because like joy is not superficial, that it really does this very intimate, personal work of affirming and fortifying and empowering people during difficult times. And 2018 was difficult. And let's be honest, it was not going to get better going forward. And so it's things like this that sort of serve as a balm.
Yeah, that idea of the act of joy and enjoyment itself as a political act that doesn't have to like declare itself beyond that itself, especially in a time like 2018, sends a message. And when you were talking about the people going to the theater in kente cloth, I think those are kind of the enduring images of that period for me, was like folks showing up with their whole families, with their kids, dressed in all different kinds of African prints, and it being this moment of just, this is awesome. And it feels, and that joy has a politics that is different from like, I mean, no shade to the Barbie movie, which was awesome, but it was different than like showing up in like different Barbie outfits to the Barbie premieres. That it had this weight to it that the lightness was the weight in a way. I don't know quite how to say it, but that's one of the things that I love about bringing this in.
No, I get it. I mean, even let's be fair. Marvel has its criticisms as well. Like, I feel like same with Barbie and all of that stuff. But like, I think there is something about having sort of a shared community experience that has so much enthusiasm and goodwill toward it, that can be transformative in the way that people sort of see themselves, and in the way, hopefully, that Hollywood sees, like, you know, Hollywood only sees green. So when something makes money and when people start to see the value in producing Black films and using Black directors and having Black, you know, story writers and screenwriters, like, that can have a impact as well, that, you know, yes, Black culture absolutely sells, as it should, and that, you know, we can think about and reimagine things that could be on screen that we've never seen before.
Let's talk about another moment that you get to in the book, even more recent memory, and I think is, you know, just incredibly fascinating. I'm so glad you got to write about it, or I'm so glad it kind of fell into the cycle of you writing this book, because it, you know, it merits, I think, all of the deep thinking that you brought to it, as kind of viral and silly or whatever it was on its face. But it was this moment, and we don't have to do the like second by second breakdown. There's plenty of internet videos that break this down. But let's go to the let's go to the videotape that went viral of the brawl in Montgomery, Alabama, at a dock where a group of white boaters got into it with a couple Black employees, and then other people started to get involved, and it turned into this massive brawl that, you know, the internet really loved, because it's drunk people punching each other, which the internet always loves. But there is, I think rightfully so, you identify a lot more going on there, both in the incident itself and, you know, the kind of joyful, nuanced, complicated, all over the place sort of discourse that broke out online around it.
I mean, it's all the Montgomery Brawl is every single chapter involved and encapsulated in one moment. I mean, first of all, I should say that how I heard about this brawl was I was in Ghana, and I was actually on my way back to the States. And Ghana was such a big transformative trip that's there. It's in Ghana where I saw the quote, you know, "We are the children of those who refuse to die," which is part of my dedication to my children. And so feeling very like sort of empowered in that moment. And then all of a sudden my phone starts to blow up. And my friend calls me and she's like, "Girl, are you watching this?" And I was like, "I'm in Ghana. I don't know what's going on right now." And she was like, "It is going down. Just Google, like, just go to Twitter and put in Montgomery Brawl." And I was like, "What?" And then I could not stop laughing. I could not stop hollering. Like, at first I was like shocked. And then I was like, what? And then it was like every single emotion. I could not control myself. And so as soon as I'm about to board a long flight and I'm like, no, I want to keep watching coverage. But but it persisted for a few days. And I think what that moment encapsulated was, one, you got to see a difficult moment in which a Black person is assaulted by a white person. But immediately following that, the refusal of the dock worker who sort of throws his hat off like oh, hell no. And it sets off Revolution Protection Force Flight Joy, like all in one moment. You have like a teenage boy hopping in the water to the rescue. You have people, swinging white folding chairs, and the folding chair becomes a symbol of resistance, and you have all of these gifts and memes. And I think a lot about this quote that comes from James Cone, this great theologian, who basically says, like, Black people hold anger and humor in their left and right hand. And he's like, that anger is really about, it's about discrimination, it's about violence, it's about white supremacy, and that anger is righteous. But the humor is what keeps us from being consumed by our fury. And so when Black people mock and they poke fun and they make gifts, it's not a superficial act. That act is actually to keep Black people from losing their minds, to keep Black people from being so enraged that they lose their own humanity. That humor is grounding, that humor can be safe, and that humor can really do the work of like delegitimizing whiteness and white supremacy. And in that moment, that's what we saw.
Kelly, this is what I love about you, is that you bring a theologian to a folding chair fight. Such an awesome way to like dig into the deeper meaning of that moment, which was, back in the days of good Twitter, just like so fun to watch.
Yes,
unfold.
Those few days in August were the most fun. And I think that, that was also the moment where people were leaving Twitter in the droves. Like, this has gone to the, the gutter, the sewer. And then, I don't know, it sort of became the first place that people wanted to go to like engage and talk about this. And the funny thing was, it didn't matter what your background was, white, Black, Asian, Latino, everyone was talking about this moment. It was on like every single talk show, podcast. Like, did you see? What did you think? Like, and the funny thing I found was that the overall sort of sentiment was not one of like horror or shame on you, or it was like, yeah, take that. like there's this overall, I think, sort of rallying call about people not wanting to see someone be violated and be harmed and disrespected, and it was just a collective hell no.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
And the memes were pretty incredible. I mean,
yes.
The hat certainly became a big symbol. The people wrote fake lyrics to the Black national anthem, "Lift every chair and swing." And then the guy who jumps into the water. I mean, the nicknames: Aquaman, Scuba Gooding Jr., Malcolm Phelps. So look, yes, the internet had its fun, but I do want to go back to this kind of like hell no joy that you are kind of trying to encapsulate here, because look, I think, and there probably was a lot of this, but I would say there's some version of a reaction to a moment like this, probably among white people, that's a little bit of hand wringing, a little bit of like, it makes me feel a certain kind of way that people are like cheering on someone hitting someone over the head with a chair or whatever. How do you kind of square that? What is it that's sort of much more nuanced than just, we like to see people fight on the internet?
Yeah, I know. It's like we're like the WWE of society. I think that this is where history really is pivotal, because when you think about the history of Montgomery and you think about the fact that that dock was a slave harbor, was a place where ships would come in with human cargo, when you think about the fact that Montgomery cannot be spoken about without talking about the history of slavery, without talking about the history of segregation, without talking about the history of mass incarceration, without talking about even sort of the history of gynecology and how Black women's bodies were experimented. All of that happened in Montgomery. And when I went to Montgomery and saw, the lynching museum that's there by the Equal Justice Initiative, you cannot be in Alabama and not know this discourse and not understand this deep history of violence, of trauma, of theft, of severance, of segregation, and not see that response is justified. And not even just justified, but minimal, I might say, small, in terms of the scale of violence that's been enacted against Black people. So, in some ways it may say like, oh no, this is so messed up. And in other ways it's like, no, look at the history. Look at the long, deep, wide history. This is the least they could do. This is actually quite nonviolent compared to what we might think of in terms of a response to that kind of violence. So, yeah, and I know people are always like, why do you got to go back into the past? Why do we have to go back that far? But I think it's necessary. It's necessary to understand the kind of trauma and the kind of wounds that Black people are facing with, and that rage doesn't come out of nowhere. The response to swing a chair is not just about someone's bad temper. This is about centuries of violence enacted against Black people.
And that feels like a reminder that the kind of fetishization of nonviolence is often used to derail that conversation about these longer historical patterns and injustices, because then you're just finger wagging about somebody swinging a chair instead of talking about all of that deep history that you're bringing to us.
No.
Yeah, I really think it's important to sort of like not just push back on nonviolence, because I think that nonviolence has a place, but to also understand its limitations and to also understand the ways that nonviolence can be manipulated into keeping people from power and to keeping people from affecting real change. And I think that is purposeful. People know what accomplishes, the change that they want to see in. And if you can create a narrative that handicaps someone from achieving that power, then using nonviolence can actually be harmful in a sense, because it can prevent the sort of transformation that people need to see in their lives.
And moreover, I think something, again, that your book really is predicated on is the idea that all of these things are sort of changing in real time and flowing in and out of each other and have a sort of complex relationship with each other, such that, if you proclaim nonviolence, that doesn't mean that violence is completely off the table, and vice versa. Any act of violence doesn't completely undermine the notion that, you want to have nonviolent resistance. I mean, they are, negotiated in real time and against each other.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's incredibly important to remember, and your book does a really good job of that.
And there's a lot it takes to get to violence. There's a lot of steps between violence and nonviolence. I think that's what I'm pushing back to. We don't always have to go to these extremes. I think one can feel untenable and the other can feel unusable. And so, finding a path forward that actually brings about sort of the systemic, structural, not just symbolic change that people want to see, but meaningful progress that's sustained. I think we really haven't seen that since 2020. We saw like a lot of, flags coming down and the names of streets changing, and we saw all of the symbolic change. But the real deep structural issues are very much still with us and even more entrenched in some ways. And that's going to take more than a hashtag and more than a march and more than a protest to undo.
All right. We are now at the end of the final episode of We Refuse Week. So I know I've said that the one rule we have on this podcast is if you write a book, you get a week. The other rule is at the end of the final episode is you get to be completely shameless in terms of plugging. Okay, so obviously people can go get the book, but there's also merch, right?
Yes, you can get the book anywhere books are sold. Yes. You can enter the sweepstakes to get a print of the artwork Soldier of Love by Taha Clayton.
Are we eligible?
Yeah. Can we get in that?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Great. There's no clause in the... Okay.
Sure, go for it. Throw your hat in the ring.
Yeah.
You can get merch. I'm really excited about this. I created like a store on my personal webpage. You can go to kellycarterjackson.com/store and buy a sweatshirt, a sticker, a mug, whatever you want. And I even have a book trailer you can go to on YouTube. I mean, like, I'm really trying to do it up.
Yeah, that's great. And the sweepstakes, again, what are the details there?
So for the sweepstakes, you will, if you pre-order a copy of the book, you enter a chance to win a signed edition of Soldier of Love by Taha Clayton.
All right. We will put links in the show notes, and obviously our newsletter. Folks should be signing up for that anyway, but we'll dedicate a issue of the newsletter to the new book and so forth. But anyway, that brings us to the end of We Refuse Week. Kelly, again, congratulations. Bravo.
Huge congratulations.
I hope your
Super
summer's
excited.
a little less crazy than it.
It's about to go nuts, I think.
That's a go bananas. I'll see y'all in September.
Yeah, all right. We'll see. All right. Well, Nicole Hemmer, thanks to you as always.
Thanks, Jody.
And Kelly Carter Jackson, thanks to you.
My pleasure.
Hey, it's Jody. Did you know that Radiotopia has a reality dating podcast? It is called Hang Up, and it's kind of like a queer cross between The Bachelor and Love is Blind. Each week, the star goes on phone dates with the callers, and then one caller is eliminated week by week. They do not see each other. Here's a taste of Hang Up.
Our star Timo is 41 years old and recently divorced.
I haven't been on a single date in 18 months.
But now, they're looking for someone special.
And like really hot sex. Really hot public sex.
So we set them up with 6 callers to date exclusively over the phone.
I feel like I could talk to you for hours.
Now, at the end of all this, the last caller standing can choose the star back as their soulmate and go on an all-expenses-paid vacation together, or choose a cash prize instead. Hang Up is hosted by Zakiya Gibbons, one of my favorite people at Radiotopia, and not for nothing, the artwork for this new season is incredible. So, check it all out. It is like nothing else being done in podcasting right now. Season 2 of Hang Up, out now on your favorite podcast platform.
Radiotopia.